The journey of Teeshi begins not with a victory, but with a paralyzing realization that his 5 years of rigorous physical training were insufficient because his mind remained fragmented. When he stood before Yamamoto-sensei, unable to strike despite a clear opening, he was confronted with the harsh truth that his technique was merely a shell. The master's diagnosis was precise: Teeshi was a corpse with good technique, because his awareness was scattered across 10 different places: fear of failure, desire for approval, and anxiety about the future. This internal clutter created a barrier between his intention and his action, proving that in the path of the warrior, the greatest adversary is not the opponent's blade, but the practitioner's own distracted consciousness. He realized that sacrifice and discipline were hollow if they did not lead to a state of total immersion in the immediate moment, setting him on a desperate quest for mental clarity. The second phase of his transformation began with the mundane task of cleaning the dojo, a test designed to shatter his ego and his narrow definition of training. While the other students viewed sweeping as a distraction from real work, Yamamoto-sensei demonstrated that the quality of one's presence transforms any act into a sacred ritual. Teeshi observed that the master's movements were not hurried or resentful; instead, each stroke of the broom was a complete universe of focus. This was the introduction to Shoshin, or beginner's mind, a state of being empty of expectation and fear. The master explained that a beginner sees only the task at hand, the grip, the stance, the swing, while the expert often loses themselves in the pursuit of outcomes. By sweeping while thinking of swords, Teeshi was living one step away from reality, a habit that ensured failure by preventing him from ever truly arriving in the present. To deepen this understanding, the master introduced the concept of the samurai's true weapons: zanshin, fudoshin, and hoshin. These are not physical maneuvers but psychological states that ensure the warrior is never caught off guard and never moved by external chaos. Zanshin refers to a remaining awareness that persists before, during, and after an action, ensuring there is no gap where an enemy might strike. Fudoshin is the immovable mind, a psychological rooting that allows a warrior to face danger without the interference of emotional turbulence. Finally, hoshin represents the ordinary mind, where the sublime focus of the dojo is carried into every aspect of life. Teeshi was instructed that until he could eat when he ate and walk when he walked, his sword would always be heavy with the weight of his wandering thoughts, for a mind that is everywhere is effectively nowhere. As Teeshi committed to 30 days of absolute presence, he entered a period of intense psychological friction where his mind rebelled against the perceived slowness of his new life. Every meal became an agonizingly long exercise in sensory awareness, and every walk to the hall felt like a test of patience. However, by the second week, the constant mental chatter began to subside, revealing a profound silence beneath the noise. In this silence, he began to perceive the world with a clarity he had never known. The sound of the wind, the creaking of wood, and the rhythm of his own heart became vivid realities. This shift marked the deactivation of the default mode network in his brain, the neurological circuit responsible for rumination and anxiety. By strengthening his prefrontal cortex through constant return to the breath, he was physically restructuring his brain to prioritize immediate awareness over abstract worry. The effectiveness of this mental rewiring was proven during a sparring session with Kenji, a talented fighter where Teeshi experienced the state of Mushin, or no mind. For the first time, there was no internal monologue calculating the odds or fearing the master's judgment, there was only the movement of the blades and the shifting of weight. When Kenji attacked, Teeshi's body responded with a fluid, unthinking grace that bypassed the slow processing of the conscious mind. This flow state allowed him to perceive his opponent's intentions before they were fully realized, demonstrating that awareness is infinitely faster than thought. It became clear that the goal of the samurai is to train the body so thoroughly that it can be trusted to act on its own, leaving the mind free to remain as a mirror, reflecting the world without distortive attachment. The final test at the dojo involved a terrifying confrontation where Teeshi faced a live steel katana while armed only with a wooden bakken. In this moment of life and death stakes, the old Teeshi would have been paralyzed by the amygdala's fear response, but the new Teeshi stood grounded in the here and now. He understood that he could not control the master's steel, but he could control his own presence. As the blades clashed, the fight became a dance of pure response rather than a struggle for dominance. He even recognized a deliberate trap set by the master, a false opening that would have snared a student hungry for victory. By refusing the bait, Teeshi proved he had moved beyond the desire to win and had entered the realm of wisdom, where the warrior understands that some victories are actually defeats. Upon passing the test, Teeshi was sent to Mount Koya to study with Zen monks, a transition from the warrior who fights to the warrior who transcends. Master Ikkyu forced him to leave his swords at the gate, stripping him of his identity and forcing him to confront the raw reality of his own mind through hours of zazen meditation. This was the second transformation, where the focus shifted from external technique to internal void. He learned that thoughts are like clouds passing through a vast sky, they are not the sky itself. By observing his anxieties without engaging with them, they lost their power to dictate his actions. This year of silence was not a retreat from the world but a deepening of his capacity to engage with it without being shattered by its inherent instability. Teeshi's ultimate challenge came when he was sent to protect a village from 5 bandits, led by the fallen samurai Katsuru. Instead of relying on the violence he had spent a decade perfecting, Teeshi utilized the power of absolute presence to transform the conflict. By standing unarmed and unafraid before armed men, he projected a stillness that acted as a mirror, forcing the bandits to confront their own lost honor. His lack of aggression left them with nothing to fight against, proving that the most powerful weapon is a mind that does not need to win. When a bandit's sword stopped inches from his throat, it was not because of a physical block, but because Teeshi's aura of Shoshin made the act of violence feel futile and hollow to the aggressor. The resolution of the conflict through dialogue rather than bloodshed was the final proof of his mastery. He taught the bandits that honor is not something granted by a lord but something held within the original mind that never changes. Through his presence, he offered them a path back to their true selves, demonstrating that a master samurai brings life rather than death. This realization, that presence is the ultimate weapon because it transforms the enemy, became the cornerstone of his future teaching. He saw that the cycle of violence is fueled by distraction and ego, and that the only way to break it is to remain so rooted in the present that the sparks of conflict find no tinder to ignite. A decade later, as Teeshi took over the dojo, he passed these lessons to a new generation, beginning not with a sword, but with a broom. He understood that the path of the samurai is a continuous circle of Shoshin, where the master must always remain a beginner. To his eager young students, he explained that there is no final destination where one becomes the greatest, but only a series of moments to be lived with total awareness. By teaching them to just sweep or just eat, he was preparing them for the ultimate freedom, the ability to be fully alive in every breath. The legacy of the samurai, in Teeshi's eyes, was no longer about the steel on one's hip, but about the unshakable peace in one's heart and the clarity of a mind that is always, irrevocably, here and now.